from 11.1, starting on page 50 in the presentation you have. Are there any additional recommendations from any edits, not additional ones, edits? Honorable Molefe, then Honorable Wakelin. Honorable Molefe.
Yeah, Chair, in terms of, in relation to recommendation number 2, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I've noted that the budget for employment, employment creation, is only for this year, and then there's nothing budgeted for the outer years. I don't know if you've noticed that.
The item for? You mean the
Employment
presidential
programs. Employment programs. There's a table there.
You mean the PAI, the PEI, the Presidential Employment Initiative?
Yeah, but on this table it just says employment programs.
In which vote?
I'll get it just now, Chair. Okay, let's pack it. Let me look
As a
for it.
brief, Honorable Member. Honorable Wakelin.
Chair, recommendation 1 that we requested early on in the review was the matter of the equitable, the comprehensive spending review. Can I read it to you? And let me see if we capture it as a recommendation. Is the comprehensive spending review should systematically be applied to national departments, province, municipalities, and all public entities to eliminate as far as practical waste, duplication, and inefficiency.
That's fine.
11 point.
That's not there yet.
It's not there.
We're adding.
If you are happy with then 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, we can make that, if you like, Honorable Member. Can I suggest we put that as 11.11? Mashile, you got that? It's the last one. Put it there, 11.11. 11.11.
That's the very last one.
Yes, put it there. Yes, Honorable.
I found it.
Yes, Honorable Molefe.
Table 1 on page 4 or 5.
Yes.
It says the employment programs 4.5 billion for this year, I think. And then there's nothing for 26, 27, 27, 28.
You said page one, Honorable Member?
Around page 5, 4 or 5.
Page 5 on my iPad.
Table 1.
Oh, I remember that table.
Yeah, but
I remember that table.
these are line items in various votes.
Yes. So it says there's 4.5 billion budgeted for employment programs. And then there's nothing for the outer years.
Oh, I see.
Now, that is concerning, Chair, because 4.5 billion is a lot of money. And it just means that whoever is going to be employed in those employment programs is going to be thrown in the street. Unless if I'm not reading it correctly.
I think it is the Presidential Employment Incentive
Yes.
Scheme.
Yes.
And it adjusts depending on where we go. But that item, Sfiso, can you look at that table? Maybe we can get some assistance from some of the members from Treasury.
No,
Sfiso.
it's simple. The presidential employment initiatives, it's not meant to create permanent jobs, because that's where you hire the temporal teacher assistants and all that. So generally, it's like if you look at the COVID-19 of the social relief distress grant, whenever decision is taken to extend the program, that's
An
when
allocation.
money will follow. But if there is no decision to extend the program, that is why it's not budgeted for in the outer years, because it's not permanent in nature.
So am I correct to say that those people that will be getting 4.5 billion this year will be in the street next year?
I
Not
think,
really, not
Honorable
really.
Molefe, so that we don't delay this discussion further, that issue is, it's a bit like SRD. It's a bit like any other fund. Parliament has to agree on it, and off we move. It has to be a proposal every year. So that question is really not for here. It should legitimately go to the presidents.
No, Chair. All these amounts that are here in the outer years are proposals that come here every year. But at least there's an indication of what will be happening. Now, the indication in this instance is zero for employment programs.
Chair?
It's an incentive scheme, but I don't think we could really adjust for that now. I can't add additional figures onto it. for
No, I'm
argument's
not.
sake.
I'm not saying we should adjust it. I'm saying we are concerned.
No, but I think I disagree with you, Honourable Member. And at this point in time, I hear I mean, employment schemes vary all across government departments. This sits within a particular. A question can be fairly put: what will happen to the presidential employment scheme next year? Fair point, but I'm not sure it sits within this report. I think in the same way as any other incentive scheme, motivation has to be sought for it. Honourable Bateman.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few things. I just note, firstly, in 11.7 refers to progress reports on the review of the white paper, but I think we need to actually stress that this needs to be delivered in line with our previous recommendation. I think it's due for delivery this year still, if I'm not mistaken. I think we should just recommend that.
So, what's your recommendation? What is your ask?
The wording would be that the white paper on local government should be completed together with its recommendations on the equitable share calculations within this year.
And then what happens if it is not?
Well, then they won't have met our recommendation. But I think,
I
I think
do
we're
take
saying
your-
it needs to be done. You know, how long is it going to take before it's finished?
This is the difficulty in that this issue of the review of the white paper on local government has been going on for decades. This is not so to say by the end of this year, sure, is asking for something, but I'm nervous. I would rather that the word urgent be applied, and I would rather state that periodic updates must be sought from COCTA. But to put a timeline towards the end of it is genuinely putting, to say by the end of this year, for something that's been going on for 10 years.
It reminds me, Chair, if I may, of a little play that I remember when I was young, teenager, where somebody was saying they're urgently looking for the white papers. And eventually someone came along with a toilet roll and said, here's the white papers. It's becoming a little bit like that, sort of like a saying, because it just keeps on getting rolled from year to year and there's no progress. And I think we actually need some accountability on delivery here, because a lot is actually depending on it.
I mean, it's,
And,
it's for,
also we're putting a lot of weight on it
sure.
as Parliament. So how about a little bit of accountability for at least a first draft to be delivered?
Fair. Musa?
Yeah, Chairperson, just to assist, in one of the engagements, I think with National Treasury and COCTA, they've already given us a date. They said it's March 2026. That's the...
Make the recommendation then to state that it's March 2026. Honourable Bateman, you have your way.
Thank you, Chair. May I go on to some others?
No. One win is enough for today. Don't take more. Let me move. Honorable Wakelin, you were saying. I'll come back to you, Honorable Bateman.
Chair, on 11.7, which talks to the local government white paper, then you've got 11.11, which looks at the financial sustainability of local government. I just want to ask that in 11.7, that after the point of provide quarterly progress report, and then include the two matters that we spoke about and agreed on, was that due to the urgency of the matter, along with the equity share formula, so it's the white paper that has to be delivered, along with the equity share formula, including the consideration of audit outcomes as a possible input and use of the legislative tools available to hold municipalities accountable.
Sure. It's been put there. We've had this.
I can send it off to copy and paste quickly, and then you can
Just send it through. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, I just want to register that I'm not happy with the way that we dealt with the employment issue. Unemployment is a big problem in South Africa at the moment. It's the single biggest humanitarian crisis that is confronting this country. To have a budget of 4.5 billion rand this year and nothing next year on a line item relating to the creation of employment should not be a small matter that we deal with flippantly and say that, they can do it, they can't do it, doesn't matter, the president can do it, and so on. I think that we need real answers because behind that 4.5 billion rand are real people who are, unless my understanding is wrong, who will be thrown into the street because the 4.5 billion is not there. And when the matter came to us, all we said was, well, they can do it or they don't do it, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it's a correct approach, Chair. I think we should review that.
My issue is that an employment incentive scheme is the president's mechanism that says, if you and your company create a job for a young person, there's an incentive given to you to do that. It's difficult to project. I take your point about the numbers of people that are behind it. But it is an incentive scheme. It isn't a direct grant as in what is the expanded public works program works. That is a different grant. That is my understanding. So I'm not trying to be flippant about it. I'm saying it's a provision rather than an actual program.
I did my fight with it.
Yes, if it is an employment creation scheme, Chair, it means that there is a person who's getting a job because of that scheme. And if we had budgeted something for this year, I just want to understand why there is nothing for next year.
Okay. I mean, if Molefe and Sons make a decision to say next year we are not hiring Musi Maiman, for whatever reason, then the incumbent is on Molefe and Son. It's not from the National Treasury's point of view. It's the point I'm trying to understand. But I hear what you are saying. Sfiso? So I do think a question can be put forward as to the employment the PES, the PEI, the Presidential Employment, because I think that's where the line item sits. But I'm careful not to make a recommendation without a definitive, that's where it comes from on that table. If that's where it comes from, then it is a fair enough that the presidency needs to be compelled to demonstrate the medium-term output of the program. That bit I can accept.
Agreed, Chair. And going back to your example, if Molefe doesn't employ Musi Maimani next year,
yes,
the Constitution requires that Molefe must give reasons. There must be reasons. There must be no administrative action without reasons, and lawful administration action with written reasons. We can at least ask why. What are the reasons that this thing is not budgeted for, and that there's a possibility that Musi, even though it is through a very long-winded incentive scheme, is going to get a job next year, is not going to get it. But why? What are the reasons?
I hear you. So maybe that can just be captured in that way, that the employment schemes that the presidential employment skill must be able to demonstrate its sustainability over the medium term, as no allocation has been demonstrated in the table. I don't think that's the end of the world. I was just merely saying it is subject to so many other variables, as I take your point. Honorable Wakeling, because I think now we are talking this bullet point, that we are shooting from the hip. Can we focus on what is before the screen so that all of us can contribute to narrowly where we are?
So we're at 11.7. Chair?
We've dealt with that.
Yeah. So we covered that. I just needed to get clarity. My previous point was on a matter of the comprehensive spending review. I didn't see now I can't remember if there's any other bullet point there that talks to the, in detail, the way we speak about the spending review for all 4 spheres.
All 3 spheres of government.
Well, 4, which includes the public and public entities. Which is,
Yeah.
so it's 4 areas. So I wanted to get a sense, are you going to put it as somewhere else, or is a place somewhere?
If you
I
are,
wanted to check with you.
if you are making a recommendation that the spending reviews must be undertaken and deal with all 4 spheres of government in conjunction, that is a simple point to make, and we can make that in the recommendation, as I think, but it emanates from the previous point.
Yeah, I have submitted that writing to.
That's fine. Mashile, will you capture that and then we can put it on text so that we have one conversation? Honorable Bateman, I'm coming back to you now. You
Thanks.
can finish all your points.
Okay,
Because now we are heading to the close of play.
great. I can see the finish line.
So be intentional now. This is
white
your
line
moment.
fever now.
Hey?
I've got white line fever. I'm
White line
heading,
fever.
I'm
Be
heading for
careful
that.
how you use race in this. Oh no, sorry, yeah.
This relates to the discussion earlier about that National Treasury develop contingency plans in the event that economic growth and tax receipts are below forecasts.
Mm-hmm.
That's a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
The second is that the true cost of providing satisfactory education for learners should be calculated, and the equitable share calculation should be adjusted accordingly. So just the background to that is the calculation for the provinces for education is there's a certain percentage that goes, but it's the envelope is based on the historical trends about as how much has been spent on education. But what's happened is the cost of actually delivering the education has gone up much faster than economic growth and much faster than so then the envelope allocated to education. And so the quality of education has declined and the pressures on the education system have increased. Particularly, for example, ratios of learners to teachers have climbed. So we actually need to ask ourselves the question, what does it cost to run an education system? What does it cost to actually educate our learners from early childhood all the way through basic education, which are the most formative years? And when we talk about really building and investing into the country, and when we talk about redress as well, this is an absolutely critical area because it lays the foundation for the earnings capacity of the next generation, and the earnings capacity of the next generation is going to be the foundation for their economic advancement and finding an escape route out of poverty and unemployment and so on. So education is so critical, and we're actually failing the next generation because our education investment is actually inadequate. We've just had it on last year, copy and paste plus 5%, but in the reality is it's actually inadequate. And the reports we were getting during the consultation process made it really, really clear the dire state of our education, of our schools generally, and just how stretched and strained they are. So we need to lift the profile of this. And I think it comes back to this equitable share. We have sort of an idea of, well, that's the percentage for education. Figure it out, provinces. But the reality is they even the best run province is stretched to the bone trying to just make ends meet and educate kids. And you've got classrooms there with 40, 50, 60 children in them. I mean, how you can teach on that kind of basis and give the next generation a real good start in life I mean, those teachers are incredible, but they need our support and they need our help. And we actually need to find other ways of saving money to be able to get this right. There's so many programs that government does that are not nearly as important as the next generation and the education that they receive. So I'm saying let's raise the profile of this and let's put it into our recommendation that the equitable share needs to see what is equitable towards the next generation, what is fair, what do they need to be educated, and how do we find the money. I know it's a massive ask, but unless we actually put it out there, we're not actually going to be able to make progress on this. So that's the recommendation.
I hear you, Honourable Bateman. I'm going to suggest to you that you are merging your points independent of the two things are correct, but they are not complementary. Tell you why I say that. You and I can both agree on the improvement of the quality of education and for the next generation. You and I are together on that. Where I think we need as a committee, and I think this is something that I've become aware of, is that the definition of, in the provincial equity, the nature of equity there is determined by a number of variables that go into that, of which one of them is population size and indigency. The dilemma with the determination as to what the allocation is that if the input that comes from Stats SA or any other institution is inaccurate, and MECs have got the right to disperse funds as they see fit, you as the National Minister of Finance can make an allocation for a provincial budget, a transfer as far as the education is concerned, and end up in a space where, because your data is inaccurate as to what the population size looks like in that space, you end up with the dilemma that Gauteng faces, where in some instances there's undercounting of their population, which further distorts their classroom sizes. So you end up literally with a province, i.e. the Eastern Cape, with lesser students than it is allocated, the Western Cape with more students, but the funding is following a formula upon whose data isn't always accurate. So I would make an independent point that says it is important for the nature of government to ensure accuracy in the data allocation. Otherwise, I mean, I speak to the MEC of Finance in Gauteng, they are dealing with a distortion of numbers. You speak to the MEC of Finance, I was with Francois Rogers in KZN, their numbers are different. So all of this has a net consequence of meaning that for their budgeting process, they are unclear that even if the prescription was 1:25 as far as teacher-pupil ratio is concerned, they can't meet that because you don't know how many pupils you've got. So I would make this one point, which is to say, data and inputs that go into the equitable share formula must be, one, more accurate, more recent, and ultimately cognizant of the needs of provinces. That's on one aspect. And that government must do everything possible, because to determine the idea of what is quality education, you and I can have a long day debate on that. But what we rather should say is that is to begin to bring teacher-pupil ratio in line with other developing countries. Because then it's objective of what you think is quality and what I think is quality. Then I can benchmark it against that. Those are two independent, if you follow what I mean. And so the committee has already made a recommendation on the review of the provincial, on the equitable share formulas, which I think the committee must uphold. What is better is to say, furthermore, along with that, is that we should rather be allocating resources in such a manner that we ensure that the teacher-pupil ratio, and the same way as the doctor-to-patient ratio, those are matters that are improving to be aligned with developing countries in our same economic size. With that said, because then I think we are rather being scientific rather than subjective or political.
Chair, I'm happy with that. I think it comes back to pretty much the same thing. I think what we're saying is there's a standard of education that we should be costing, as opposed to last year plus 5%, and hopefully that you guys will be okay. In actual fact, it's not okay. And one of the reasons is because I think wages have increased at such a rate, and that's what's actually squeezed out the teacher numbers. So anyway, I think, yes, if we can frame something to cover that point, I would be happy. I do have two other points, if I may.
Let me finish this one so that we don't have backwards and forwards. Honourable Mwale, are you speaking to this point about the provincial equitable share formula and the inputs that go into it? Okay, I'll come back to that one. I just want to finish these 2 points because I think they are crucial. Distinguish one, we've made the point, and I think it's in the report, to say the provincial equitable share formula. This review is already taking place anyways. That we must bolster that, and that actually what National Treasury must be aiming for is the improvement in the teacher-pupil ratio as much as the the doctor-to-patient ratio, that those numbers become more aligned with developing economies the size of South Africa. Because I can benchmark, I've got to benchmark them against something. Where tallest fish? Gotcha. Right, Honourable Bateman. Sorry, Honourable Mwale, I got you. I just want to finish the points that Honourable Bateman is having. Honourable Bateman.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. Did we capture the development of contingency plans from National Treasury in the event that economic growth and tax receipts are below forecasts?
It was put at the previous one, but we'll get back to it in a moment.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then 1110, it makes a point about Drakensberg local municipality, and the committee is concerned of the BFI becoming another budget balancing instrument. Given the history of this allocation, the committee would like to caution I'm not actually quite sure what this means, but I'll just read it word for word. Given the history of this allocation, the committee would like to caution the municipality its alertness on the moving funds to balance the budget. The committee would thus put it on record that it will in the future not support the movement of this allocation to balance the budget books, and the municipality must account to Parliament regarding this allocation within the context of the overall limited fiscal envelope faced by government. I must confess to being a bit in the dark. I don't know what we're trying to say here, and so I also don't know whether or not I should be supporting this recommendation.
It's Drakensberg's about. This is part of the BFI window, and this has been going on for a number of years, by the way. So maybe you can talk to this allocation because it's part of the budget for infrastructure facility. And I saw it in last year's budget book. It's still in this year's budget book. And the only point we're trying to make is that you can't keep rolling over a BFI from year to year for an allocation that was done. That is the point, I think. Swiso, you want to add anything? It would be the same as, I mean, I'm agnostic about the municipality. I'm merely saying that you can't apply in a BFI window to say, we want to do X. Then next year you keep rolling over the same funds as part. It also distorts what Treasury does from the perspective of what the budget for infrastructure allocations look like. You can go with the next point, Honourable Member.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm covered.
Honourable Mwale.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think I have 1 point. Chairperson, it is worth noting. I think I raised this with the FFC as well, that this bill is silent on the funding for the Bella Act. It doesn't say anything about it. And Chair, it is really worth noting that this act must be implemented and must be funded. So it doesn't say anything. And also from the public submissions that we got, I think Equal Education Law Center, they made a proposal that grade R should be compulsory, which speaks to the provisions of the Bella Act, of the Bella. So we don't see the funding for it, and I then think that it's supposed to be one of the recommendations that should appear there, that we need funding for it, because it is against the law to not have the funding for an act that should be implemented, because the president has already signed it into law. So we should have funds for it to be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mwali. Can I correct just the first point, which is that if a law exists, doesn't mean that the money exists. NHI exists as a law, there's no money for it. But if you are alluding to the question about the funding of ECDs as a component of BELA, then you and I are at the same place, and I think a recommendation can be made that, because the Minister of Finance in this current, they've already raised the question of increasing of funding for ECD from 17 Rand to 24 Rand, something like that. So those allocations are in some ways made. So it's in this instance, Treasury would argue the point to say, we are making a progressive one. PBO and FFC have already raised the point that in as far as the number of children, we have an underfunding of close to, there are 200,000 children that need to go into ECD centers. We cannot fund them. So the point can be made that a progressive funding of more children within ECDs. I mean, you and I, you have an ally in me, because I think we spend 400 rands on a prisoner. We spend 17 rands on a child. Tells you we prioritize the tsotsi. So I would look at the issue. So I'm endorsing of that view, but I think the point is there is an underfunding of ECD centers, and National Treasury needs to find a mechanism to fund for that. Thank you. I don't disagree with you there. Honorable Galega Mazibuko, then I'll finish with you.
I also don't disagree with the honorable member. I remember during the stakeholder engagement, there was a strong view on the funding of grade R. And I remember me asking that question of the 17 to 24, if it has an impact to grade R. And they said no. It doesn't cater for them there at that level of grade R. So I agree with the grade R as much as there's that increase from 7 to 24 at the ECD level, but the grade R should also find expression.
I think more than anything is the lesson we all learn is that as a state spends on early childhood development as a proportion of GDP will be the fundamental determinant of, and I think the point that the committee can make is that more alignment on a percentage of spend on ECD to GDP must be increasing, not decreasing. Otherwise, you'll never cater for BELA.
And for a change, I agree with MKP.
Kwaza. Honorable Bateman.
Chair, my esteemed colleague here is 100% right, and I think we all agree on ECD, because we understand the importance of that. However, I just want to get clarity. I know that from the DORA perspective, I don't necessarily know if it should come in here, but however, for certainly, it has to be in appropriation, because the provinces have made provision. In general, the provinces have made. What is he asking? Is he asking that further funding should be made available going forward, so that I can just get clarity, because already the provisional allocations are lying in the provinces, or not provisional, just the allocations are lying in the provinces. I just need clarity. Thanks, Chair.
It's a good question whether this discussion is. Are you on the honorable? On the education of the children. Okay. Because I just want to get clarity, because in the appropriations bill, this matter, as far as the vote, I don't know what vote number education is, the issue will come in there, right?
Yeah, but it can also feature here because of... It can also feature here the issue of the ECTs because of the grants that goes there, and then they form part of this bill, so you can have both.
All right. Honorable Mwali. Oh, okay. Okay. So it fits here. Can I make a suggestion in text? The suggestion in text is that the committee recommends that more allocation be made to align funding for ECD as per Bella recommendation with, if I'm not mistaken, actually, well, all we're trying to say, as per Bella recommendation, an appropriation must be made for more funding for ECD and early childhood, for early childhood development. And Treasury must give us a report on that. Musa, you are responding to this point.
Yes, maybe also just to enrich the discussion. During the engagement on DORA, we received a submission, I think, from Equal Education and Equal Education Law Center. Apparently, the costing, same with the funding gap for PEFA, the costing has been done and submitted to National Treasury. It's just that it was not tabled in this committee. I think it was tabled in the portfolio committee. So I think at some point also it would be important that we invite the department so they can engage the committee about the costing, and that later National Treasury must then fund, and we monitor that.
I mean, the Minister of Basic Education has already said that they are not having the funding mechanisms to fund ECD in this financial year or the next one. So
Yes, Chair.
law doesn't follow funds. Honourable Bateman, then Honourable Molefe.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I did note that in the recent responses from Treasury to the submissions, they did actually respond to this criticism and referred to some funding that was available. So, and I don't know that we've actually necessarily discussed their response. I'm not saying that we should change the recommendation. My point would just actually be that in some ways this is a sub-point within the point that I was making about the whole way in which we determine the equitable share for provincial. Because at the moment, as I said, it's 48% of the whatever goes to the provinces is supposedly for education, and then that's split based on the inputs are the school-going age population and the actual school-going stats, and there's a certain ratio that's applied, and they use that to split it between the provinces. But it actually bears no connection to the actual cost of education, and that's what needs to be addressed. There needs to be a zero-based exercise, and it's going to be shocking. I've no doubt it's going to be shocking for us, but it's a question we have to ask. It's a fact we have to face, and we have to prioritize our children. I mean, that's our future. So. Yeah, I'm ready to take gloves off.
I mean, I don't want to thumbsuck a figure, but I can remember it was the Nduna Foundation that made the presentation that if you really want a future of education, 8%, your spending on ECD must be 8% of GDP or something to that effect. I can remember some form of, as it's benchmarked to other OECD countries. Because we're dealing with money, we're not dealing, I suppose, in some ways, the qualitative discussion about it, because on another day we could do curriculum development, etc., and then we're traversing into a universe. But it is about what is the proportion of GDP that must be spent consistently on this sector of society coupled with other sectors. Honourable Molefe.
I would like to make a point, but I want to contextualize it a little bit. Section 26 of the Constitution, it's part of the Bill of Rights, and it says everyone has a right to have access to adequate housing. But that section is qualified. It says the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of this right. So that right is qualified. Section 27 about healthcare, food, water, and social security. Everyone has a right to healthcare, sufficient food, and social security. And that right is also qualified. It's within the available means of the state. The state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources. Section 28 is about children, the right to a name, the right to family care or parental care or to appropriate alternative care. That is not qualified, Chair. Section 29 is about education. Everyone has a right to a basic education. That right is not qualified, like housing, and healthcare and the others. So the right to a basic education is not qualified, is not subject to the state's ability to fund it, like housing and healthcare. So I think that by enacting legislation to implement Section 29 of the Constitution, which is what the Bella Act is, by saying everyone must have the right to grade R, that's the right to basic education. That right in the Constitution is not qualified. It's not subject to whether the government has money or does not have money. The money has to be made available, and it's a constitutional imperative. So I'm just saying that we're skating on thin ice. The government, somebody, maybe this NGO, can actually go to the Constitutional Court and say that the failure to fund grade R is a violation of Section 29 of the Constitution.
I don't disagree. Well, let me be clear, and I think that matter must be left to the Concord to determine, because if you go back, I can't remember when President Mandela appeared before the courts on the basis of failure to uphold constitutional obligations. The test. All right. Well, maybe that might not be the case I'm trying to refer to. It's the question about saying someone will determine if the government says, not at 5 rands per learner per year, I'm providing adequate education. I'm not qualifying that right. I'm saying it is 5 rand. Then it's up to the court to determine whether 5 rand is adequate or not.
Yes, but the issue here is the legislation says, firstly, the Constitution says you must provide basic education. The legislation is then enacted to implement that right. It says that grade R must be compulsory, which is like the most basic education. It's grade R. Yeah. And then here, there is no funding at all. That 5 rand that you're talking about is not even there. So we're not even arguing that the funds that are allocated are not adequate. No, it is just simply not been allocated. It's zero.
I hear you, Honorable Molefe, but I think if we swim in this place, we will end up debating qualitatively and quantitatively. And I take your point. But what the point that Honorable Mwali is raising is not lost on us, and that's why I said that actually the committee notes the passing of Bella, the underfunding thereof, and compels for National Treasury to create to find the necessary resources to fund early childhood development. I think the point is captured in that regard.
All right. No, if it's like this.
So we don't debate the
as long as the committee says that we agree that grade R should be compulsory and that it should be funded, I'm happy.
Yeah, no. I mean, we can't debate the law. It's
I'm happy because what we can't say is, well, Treasury doesn't have the money and so on and so forth, and they're not. In this instance, I think they are compelled. But even if they were not, I think that as a committee, we can just put it down as a recommendation. Or we're not saying go and look for the funds as the committee. We're just saying that this is what the law says. Grade R must be compulsory, and Treasury has to find the funds.
I've come to the conclusion that it is late in the day when the DA and MK are working together on an issue. Then you must know we are heading to referee's optional time. Honorable members, I think having dealt with many of the recommendations, thank you to the members who are here, I think they've been captured in the report as it is. I want to move towards the last page, which is that actually the committee recommends the committee's recommendations to the bill. That's in my section. Mashile, we can clean out that text. In my section, it's page 53, 54, and then let us then, I think the last is on page 56. I don't presume there are any additional inputs from any other members. Honorable Bateman.
Chair, will you abstain on the report?
Excellent question. Excellent question. We will vote tomorrow, Honorable Member.
He's right.
you know, he wants to know. But given that, honorable members, with the inputs that members have been made, naturally, there have been a lot of discussions about a lot of things. I trust and hope we've captured them as best as we can. I think the report has been thoroughly ventilated. The Secretariat, in that instance, will clean out all the text if there needs to be spelling or whatever the issues are, small issues. And then the report will be ATC'd for debate on Thursday, at which members will have the right to express whether they vote in support, reject, or abstain. But let me, before we move to Thursday and the report itself, the report having been duly amended and attended to, unless Honorable Molefe, there are other points that you want to make, I want to move to whether the committee accepts the report or not. Honorable Molefe?
We do not accept the report, Chair.
I accept that point.
And yeah, but we did a division. We do not accept the report, and it should be duly noted in the minutes.
Correct. That is noted. In that regard, may I ask if there's a member who would like to move for the adoption of the report? Honorable Waitlin moves. Honorable Gallagher Mazibuko will second. With that, the report being duly considered and adopted by the Committee on Appropriations with the objection of the MKP party. Or MK party, I suppose. MKP party sounds like a tautology. Yes. I will then, honorable members, thank you very much for what has been an extensive day. We have done our best to try and keep to time. It is now 4:15. The report will be ATC'd, and we meet tomorrow morning for a briefing with the Department of Transport in committee room S19. Oh.
We have changed. We'll be moving to 515 next door.
Committee room
Tomorrow.
515.
Sure.
Honorable 9:30. Because the meeting is physical tomorrow, people have to physically get here, so we start at 9:30. Yes, Honorable Wiglin.
My apologies, Chair. Wednesday, can I please render my apologies, as I will be at the by-election on Wednesday.
Please send that in writing, Honorable Member, and then the committee secretariat will take note of it. Honorable members, with all of that, let me thank you. Thank you for the spirit with which this committee works. It is robust at times, but it is fair in the work that we do. Thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting is now adjourned.